You either love him or you hate him. Some people see him as a force of good, others see him as a force of evil. Today we'll be looking at both sides so that we can look at it objectively. Because even the best person in this world can make mistakes, and even the worst person in this world can sometimes do right things. Starting with the good stuff, the top of the list for Imran Khan is going to be resilience. And resilience is the ability to just keep going at something irrespective of the challenges that you hit, the failures that you have. You keep going at it, until you're able to achieve success. And so in that context, right from his cricketing years, his cricketing fans would know of his entire journey, where he started, right from the bottom of the food chain and went up to eventually winning the World Cup for the team and for the country. Similarly, when his mother passed away, he wanted to build a cancer hospital because he realized there wasn't any really good, decent cancer hospital in Pakistan, and especially for the treatment of the poor. So he went on this, massive donation spree, and a lot of people made fun of him in terms of his desire or ambition to do that. But eventually, he managed to establish one of the finest cancer hospitals around the world, and that continues to this day, and they're setting up multiple branches all across the country. So that was a good example of resilience. Similarly, when he entered politics, he had to keep going for about 22 years before he hit some kind of success. And in the beginning, a lot of people made fun of him. And most of the politicians, the legacy politicians, would make fun of him, and he struggled to get a seat here and there. And eventually, he did become the prime minister. Although that, again, is a very controversial subject, because a lot of people would say that, he did that with the crutches from the establishment, which is unfortunately a tragic reality so far for the country, where, that kind of assistance is required eventually at times to get to be in the government. The second major plus for Imran Khan is his desire for an independent foreign policy. So long before he became the Prime Minister of Pakistan, he was very clear in his interviews, in his statements that, that we shouldn't be acting as a hired gun for the US or for anybody else. And more specifically, in the year 2011, 2012, when US was conducting a war on terror in the Pakistan-Afghanistan region, and there used to be a lot of drone attacks in civilian areas, Imran Khan came out very strongly and boldly on the fact that this should be banned. Drone strikes should not be allowed in civilian areas because there is just they call it collateral damage, but there is just too many civilian deaths, and that is just the wrong way of doing things. He held rallies for it. He went all the way to Waziristan, which was sort of the hotspots in that area for the drones. Afterwards, when he was the Prime Minister of Pakistan, during a famous interview by a Turkish journalist who asked him about the possibility of having US bases in Pakistan, and Imran Khan replied, absolutely not. Now his followers see this as one of his hallmarks of his foreign policy, and his opponents obviously do not accept that and make fun of him for saying that. Similarly, coming back to the philanthropic side, if you look at the hospital, the university, some of his policies while he was the prime minister were, he organized shelters for the poor, and he made conscious efforts to make sure that, there are no people below the poverty line. That just show a part of his personality where he appears to genuinely care for people, who are not able to have a good quality of life. Now, coming on to the bad or the evil side, the first one is very interesting because it can almost be classified as pure evil, was the fact that at one point, when he was visiting one of the tombs, he went into prostration. And this is something which is completely disallowed in Islam. Actually, the key message of Islam is to worship one God, and it does not allow physical prostration to any entity, other than God. And so when he was asked about it, he tried to sort of give it a spin that it was, out of respect and reverence. But obviously that is, not allowed in any capacity. And he should have just come out and, just completely said that he was either ignorant or he did something completely wrong. So that was a very bad incident on his part. Similarly, there's a lot of talk about the fact that he's been a superstitious person, and it appears in a number of situations where that may have happened. So, for example, electing the Chief Minister of Punjab and there's just adamantly continuing to go on with him appears to have been connected with some kind of a superstitious suggestion, and there were other superstitious suggestions. Again, Islam, has no place for superstitions. So it's not allowed for anyone, especially for somebody who's a leader or who wants to be seen as a great leader for a Muslim country. Superstitions have no place. I hope he's learned the ignorance of that view. And last but not the least, his performance as the prime minister was absolutely hopeless and pathetic. It was actually so bad. Most of his party leaders had started to leave him, and so a lot of people say that if they hadn't forcefully removed him, he would have just faded into history, and that appears to be true. And that is where you could see it in any way you want, but as they say, God works in mysterious ways, or whatever you plan always doesn't happen. So that was that brought him back into a lot of limelight because of apparently his narrative or the stance that he's supposed to have taken. And then in the next election, although they tried their best to completely remove him from the elections, but he still ended up winning a landslide. But his performance, going back to his performance as a prime minister, was absolutely poor and pathetic. And that was one of the reasons, was because his promises were up here and his performance was down there. Because under normal circumstances, you may have rated his performance kind of okay-ish if you had said that, he's the first-time prime minister, and he's got a bit of growth going. The textile industry has come back to life. You could have given him all those things to attribute to success, but because he had promised the world, it ended up being a huge disappointment for almost everybody that supported him or that voted for him. Another big wrong from his side was compromising on meritocracy. He had always, his rhetoric was all about justice and meritocracy. But when it came to the highest position in the military, in the establishment, he ended up compromising, and he gave an extension. And so, this is very weird and very odd, because how can you have meritocracy, or how can you push for meritocracy in the country when you're compromising on the highest positions of the country? If there's no meritocracy there, how can you, with force, or as they say, with a straight face, how can you push for a meritocracy? And that was one of the things that happened, because in his government, the kind of corruption that was there historically in the country more or less stayed the same. There may have been a very minor improvement, but there was no visible, there wasn't any major improvement in getting rid of corruption or in the law and order. And that is obviously because once you compromise at the highest levels, then it becomes really difficult to implement that at the lower levels. So you've looked at the good side and you've looked at the bad side, and so I'm going to leave it to you in terms of making up your own mind. In terms of on balance, do you see more good? Do you see more bad? Are you in the middle, or what position you have? But essentially, the most important thing is to look at things as objectively as we can. Thank you.